Hello guys, welcome back to JD Bots. In this video, we are going to run Power Automate flow using an API from the Postman. This is part of the authentication in e-commerce chatbot. Well, why we are using the Power Automate for authentication? Well, this is required for sending an OTP to the user. That part we'll be doing in a Power Automate flow. Let's get started. I hope you have logged in to flow.microsoft.com. We come to the My Flows. We then create a new flow and I'll just create an instant flow. Let's give a flow name, send OTP. And as of now, I'll be selecting the trigger as manual trigger. Later, we'll be changing it in the flow. Now, since manual trigger is already here, we'll have to delete this and change it to the another trigger. And another trigger is when API request is received. I guess here this is the one request when an HTTP request is received. Basically, this is trigger based. So when this will run, when the HTTP request we make to this flow is received, then only our flow will run. Otherwise, it will not run. Earlier we had that instant cloud flow, right? So that will be run on demand basis. So whenever you click on run, that time it will run. So we have another trigger, recurrence, that gets triggered on a frequency when you schedule it. And even we have so many other types of trigger, and this is one of them when an HTTP request is received. You might be knowing about the Azure functions. In those also we have the similar type of trigger when an HTTP request is received. So using that concept only, here we will be using. After we have the trigger ready, we have to create a JSON schema, and that we can create it using a sample. So in our case, what information is needed to send it to the user? First, we'll need an email. And for example, this is just a sample we are creating. We can just give an email. Suppose I am the user who wants to get an OTP. So I'll just write my email. And next we will need a subject. This is completely optional. This you can hard code it inside the flow itself, but we'll be sending it from for today's context, we'll be sending it from the Postman. And this is my subject line, email validation code. And next information we need is the OTP. This will be generating from the Postman, like we'll be just hard coding for now. And let's say I have this OTP. And finally, we will need the username. Alright. Why we need username? Because we need to address the user inside the email. And then we click on done. This will generate the schema for us. It's just like a template. With this schema, you can put any values to your JSON and just pass it to here. Like just call this API. Alright, we have this schema ready where email is type of string and then subject also similar type. Then we have the OTP, then username. Then yeah, this have our schema ready and coming to the next step. The next step is we need to send an email. Well, you can use any connector. We have the Office 365, then you can use the Gmail connector or a simple mail connector. Then we have the personal Outlook connector. Since I don't have the Office 365 Outlook account, then I'll be just using the personal Outlook connector. And that we have, let's search where we can find it. There it is, outlook.com. You open that and you'll get the list of connectors. It's not necessary that you use this only, but since I don't have the Office 365 account, so I'll be using this connector. And for that you need to sign in to your account, from where you need to send the email. Well, we have signed into the account. Alternatively, you can just click on this three dot and change it to the new connection. So if you need to use another email account to send the email from, here we need to provide the to address. This to address, I'll be getting it from the trigger. Just click on the dynamic content and here you'll find all the variables produced from the last step, and I'll select the email. Similarly, for the subject, we have the subject ready, and for the body as well, let's say hi, and we need to provide the username. Here we are just creating an email, that's all. Please find your email verification code, and we'll just provide the OTP and full stop, and it should be your, and finally regards Nami Choco's team. Alright, well, this seems to be fine. We have our email ready, and in the last step we'll be just giving a response at the end of our flow run, and the response we can just use that action, and response, inside request you'll see this action as response. So when the API request is successful to this trigger, that means you'll have to send some response back to the Postman or like any client application you're using. We have the status code, that is 200, that's the success status code, and here we need to just, I'll change it to JSON object. Earlier it was key value pair. I am changing it to the JSON object and just passing it from the list of variables available from the trigger. And the body, which you would like to send back to the Postman in this case for today's context. Otherwise, if you're using in some programming language, then you'll have to get some response so that you can verify whether the email was sent successfully or not. And here we'll be just creating a simple JSON, and I'll just write status, and let's say success, and the key value pair I'll be just using is message, and then we can just define OTP sent. Alright, so this is the body which will be sent at the end of the flow run. So when you save this flow, and if you notice, if you open the trigger, you'll notice that this HTTP post URL is generated. Make sure you keep this URL confidential, because if it gets in the hands of somebody, then they can just use it to trigger this flow and utilize your resources. Alright, we'll be just copying this HTTP post URL and we open the Postman. Inside Postman, I have created a new collection, that is the Power Automate, and in this I'll be just adding a new request. And the request name will be, or we can just say send email. Alright, send OTP email. That makes more sense. And this should be a post request, and here you copy and paste your this post URL. With this we come to the headers, and headers you need to provide that content type, and here, and the value should be application/JSON. Inside here we have to create the body content. In the body content we'll have to provide the same thing what we have provided to generate this schema, so we can just use a different value. And so what all key value pairs were there? Email was there, then we have the subject, then OTP, username. Make sure you use the same properties while creating the JSON body. Email is ready, then we have the subject. This creates our JSON body, and we are ready to send the API request. And there we have the status, success, and the message is OTP sent. And let's go and check the Power Automate flow. You can always check the run history down below, and it just took 5 seconds to finish the execution. And you can open this when an HTTP request was received, and you can see here all the values for the properties we defined. This was coming from the Postman. And in the send an email we'll have the body created, hi bots, and please find your email verification code. And finally we have this response. This is the response we defined. Alright. You can dynamically define this response. We just hard coded this status, success, and message OTP sent. And okay, email was sent. Let's see whether we received the email or not. And here we have the email from the Nami Chocos. And there it is. Hi bots, please find your email verification code. Well, you can use this type of HTTP post request for various other purposes, for running your Power Automate flow from your client application or your backend application, whatever it make. Well, this completes our triggering of Power Automate flow from Postman using an API. In the next part, we'll be using the same thing, but we'll be triggering from the C# code. So we'll be just basically calling the API from the C# code to trigger this Power Automate flow. Thank you all. See you in the next video.